Hi, Faizan and here.
Daud.
We're from Enclave Digital Ecosystems. So Rahim, this time, this video, I wanted to chat about personal security and privacy, right? So I think, there's so much content out there about organization cybersecurity, and we'll talk about it at some point as well, because that's our interest within this business that we've got going here. But for our perspective, my perspective was this experience, and you actually posted recently on Twitter as well as on LinkedIn, I believe, around personal, right, like some tips and tricks for managing your own security in your personal life. So I want to kind of touch base on that, because I have conversations with some clients, and when I share some of those tips that I kind of follow to make sure I keep my data secure, keep myself secure. And I'm not perfect either, but there is a lot of thirst for that knowledge. Right. So I want to kind of talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, but before we get into that, I want to thank you for letting me sit on the Santa Claus chair. I've been wanting to try this out for a while.
Santa Claus chair. Yeah. So we use my wife's office to do these things. I'm sure she'll love hearing about this being considered a Santa Claus chair. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually one of the episodes. I'm actually going to lie down and then you analyze me. Like we role play the right way.
So my wife will tell you don't want me analyzing it. My wife's the therapist in the house, so yeah. There's only one needed in the household.
Absolutely, I hear you. And I'm not going to say anymore because she's probably going to watch this.
Oh yeah. I'm sure I'm already in trouble now.
Yeah, you are. Sorry, I'll get back on topic. So, I kind of. Sorry, we went off track.
No, it's good.
I kind of, the gist of where you're going with this and where I think you're going with this, and bring me back on course if you think I'm going too far out on a tangent. But, in our experience, right, we've met two different camps essentially. One that is so overly concerned about security and privacy that they just hinder all sorts of things in the process. They're like overly thinking it. And then the other end of the spectrum is right at the opposite end of it all, where they're like, we have nothing to hide. I have nothing to worry about. And I think, we've got problems on both ends, but I think, the bigger problem we have is in everything in between there. Because at least those two, have an understanding, have an awareness of what it is that they're doing. At some fundamental level, they know that, they're overly sensitive here, and, they're kind of, I don't care if it happens to me, and so what? It's the people in the middle that are sort of confused. They're going, well, wait a minute, do I listen to this train of thought or that train of thought? And I think what you nailed here is kind of that, having that awareness of personally, what is it that you stand to lose? Right. And it's great that we're having this conversation, because I just got a message yesterday from my phone carrier that informed me of a database leak at their end from September 2017.
Right.
Okay, what are we, March 2020?
Yeah.
I just get an email from them saying, from the president, a long, wordy email that says, we're totally committed, blah, 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 but sorry. So since 2017, September of 2017, the passwords in their environment were compromised. And as a result, they're informing everybody now 2 years later. Now, for somebody that doesn't have this regular password changing hygiene, which again, there's two camps here. There's camps that say don't change your passwords as often, and there are those that do.
And I'm one of those confused ones as well. Because
so for those, it's like a moment of shock. It's like, what have I lost? Right? For the likes of me, it's like, okay, since September 2017 to now, I don't change my passwords that often, but I've probably changed it twice.
Yeah.
So I take a little bit of comfort in that, going, okay, whatever it is, there was that short window of opportunity that the hacker had to exploit my credentials. The second thing I have with that cellular service is I've got regular check-ins in place, like a hygiene sort of checklist that says of other things, because I use two-factor a lot. I use two-factor authentication everywhere. So I want to make sure that nobody can steal my identity as far as my primary device for two-factor authentication is concerned, which is my mobile device. So the fact that my SIM is very protected for me, I've got checks and balances in place as a human being using that technology going, I'm confident that whatever the breach was, there's a window of opportunity, there's a sliver of opportunity that the hacker had, and maybe some things, going to go sideways that I have to anticipate. But for the most part, I can go to bed tonight knowing it's okay. Stuff happens, right? Now, on the flip side of it, for somebody that has not taken these basic precautions, that doesn't even have an awareness that they need to, the amount of information you're leaking out there, the amount of stuff that you are providing unnecessarily most times is so ridiculous, and we can sit here for hours and talk about it, that if anyone actually exposed to you what happens when you turn on your phone and just 2-hour morning routine, what's involved in that, you will stop using technology because it will freak you out. I'll tell you that, right? But it doesn't have to, because at the end of the day, there is some merit to some information collection. There is some merit to how it is that, these organizations that help this world become smaller, Facebook is a good example, there is some merit to their business model. And if you understand their business model and you function within the context of their business model and protect yourself, you can take advantage of a service that otherwise brings a great amount of value to people that can't stay in touch together, every day.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's the same conversation you started with, right? Like, it's having that balance. It's figuring out where that balance is. How much information are you willing to? And we know, right? Like, these services are free. A lot of the services that
you're the commodity when it's free.
Yeah. Right. Like, they want data on me, so they can go. Most of them because they want to sell me something.
Yes.
Right. They want to sell me that next gadget. I was looking at. We were talking about painting. I'm pretty sure if Amazon was listening, they'll be talking to us about, here's a new painting that you should buy, right? Like so I think there is some merit there to have that information. Some of it's useful, but how about like from a privacy perspective, right? I think that's important.
But with a lot of these things where where there are legitimate outfits, I mean, Google takes a lot of flack for collecting a lot of information. And yes, Google has its shares of no-nos, and sometimes they make me cringe too. But you have an opportunity to opt out.
Yeah.
You always have an opportunity to opt out. A lot of people do not know that they do.
Right.
And that's, I think, where the fundamental issues are. I mean, any organization that's going to collect information from you may not be very transparent about what it is that they do with the data, but they have the ability within the app or the website or wherever it is you're going for you to take a moment and uncheck things that you think are non-negotiable for you, that you're not going to compromise with. Do not let this app run in the background all the time, right? I do not need this running in the background all the time. A lot of people don't know that they can turn that off.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where the awareness problem is you can use all these technologies, and there are some technologies that you shouldn't use, right? Just because they just don't give you the facility to do this, and they do things that, it's not only the stuff that shows up in the media, that whole Cambridge Analytica thing and Facebook and all of that. I mean, anybody that, wants an opinion from me, the first thing I'll say is, just don't use Facebook, right? But that may not be practical for a lot of people.
Exactly.
But within the context of Facebook itself, you go into your profile settings, there's a whole lot of things you can turn off. Look at it, at least. Spend 15 minutes of your time on it and turn it off. Right? And those are the basic fundamentals we're talking about here.
Right. So, I mean, putting aside a particular technology, right? When you're talking to your family members or to your friends about privacy and security when it comes to just their personal lives, what are some of the basic things? And I know the article, we'll share that article as part of this video as well. What are some of the basic things that everyone should look at? Like you just suggested, hey, go into your profiles, go into the settings, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, whatever, right? Like, actually go through and check out those settings. If you don't understand it, yes, there's some research that needs to be done, but at least go look at what's available, right?
Yeah.
What can be turned off.
Yeah.
But what are some of the other things that, like, some basic hygiene things that we can kind of share right now to say, here, look at these things?
I think, if we were to knock off kind of the top 2 or 3, passwords. We take passwords for granted. Right? And, at a minimum, be sensible about the passwords you choose. Right? There are different theories about what passwords work and what don't work. People like us are invested in a password-less future because we think passwords are really horrible. and we empathize with people that have to remember, stupid long passwords.
Yeah.
But, don't take that whole identity authentication thing lightly, right? So look at your options there, kind of knocking it off. Second, you don't really have to give that social media website all the information that it asks for. When you're sitting there and you're giving your name, and it wants your mailing address, and it wants your date of birth, and yes, it tells you, you can hide your year of birth for vanity purposes or what have you, whatnot. You don't have to provide all that information. I mean, everywhere on social media, I was born on January 1st, 1900, because I don't give a crap about giving them my date of birth.
Yeah.
Right? That minimizes, in my mind, it's dishonest, yes, but it's dishonest for a good reason, in that you don't need that information. Why are you forcing me? In some applications, they absolutely need you to fill out your date of birth. And the claim is, we want to make sure that children aren't signing up to this. Well, if you want to make sure children aren't signing up to your website, there are different checks and balances that you need to put in place. Trusting, you cannot trust a 12-year-old to go on there and tell you that they're 12 years old, right? Yeah. So that's BS, and we're calling it out. But at the same time, you don't need to know my date of birth. And so if anything does go sideways, the amount of information that's out there is very limited in terms of what can be used to exploit me, right? And then the third thing is I might become very unpopular for saying this, is, every moment of your life does not need to be recorded and kind of promoted to the entire planet. Right? I get it. Like, some of us are, more excited about life than others.
Well, the challenge is, the challenge is, of course, I mean, whether we do it or not. So some people are actually using these platforms and using their lives to monetize.
Correct.
Right? So I hear you, right? Like, I mean, it's a conversation that I've had to have with my kids, right? Like, they want a phone. Why do you need a phone?
Yes.
Like what purpose is that going to serve you right now? Right, so I just refuse. Social media, even email was a hard one because now they're having online classes.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I had to loosen it up a bit, but it's still difficult, right, to have those conversations. So I hear you, but I also kind of see the other side as well. It's like, hey, I want to share. These are the things I'm doing, but it does open you up, right? Because all of that video, I think what people don't understand is video and images and all that. It's being actually collected as data.
Correct.
Right there. What was this organization that recently got hacked?
Clearview.
Clearview, yeah. Right, like they were actually collecting all these images to be able to do facial recognition. Yeah, they were just taking it and doing facial recognition, and then they got hacked as well. So it's like, I think it is, everything we put out, and we put out stuff too, right? Like, I'm not. Absolutely. I'm sure somebody wants to go hack my profile. They'll figure it out, and they'll find information on me that I want to hide. Yeah. Sure. The challenge is, honestly, is that everything that I put up, this video itself is going to turn into data.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody's going to mine it to see what information they can glean off of it.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's a challenge, but it's a fine balance, right? It's like people are actually monetizing off of these platforms.
Correct.
And I'm glad that they are. Yes. I get to learn because they're putting themselves out.
Yes.
But it does open up.
Yeah, well, there's one YouTuber, I'm not going to name him, just got exposed for plagiarizing and pretending to be an expert that he isn't, right? And so, yes, people do monetize it. It's about sort of being sensible about where you collect your information from. And I was trying to think in my head as you were talking whether or not I should kind of say this or not, because if I say this, I'm sure your little one is definitely going to put in an application for me to adopt her, because I come from a different school of thought in that I allow children to explore and exploit technology, right? Yeah. So I have a nephew and a niece. Nephew is a little bit older, wanted his own MacBook. Niece, much younger, wanted a phone. Yeah. And I've educated the parents as much as I could on parental controls, on putting things in place that are there out of the box, no extra investment to be made, that help you be aware of what it is that your child is up to at any given point in time, but at the same time empower them with, have you had this conversation with your child?
Right.
Are you having this kind of a talk with them to say, these are the things you need to look out for. If somebody says this online, right, these are the kind of flags that need to go off in your head. And I think it goes a long way. And we're talking about parents and children in this particular context, but it goes a long way even with kind of that customer that you visited not long ago, where, from a business standpoint, we're selling all these great vision of, how it is that you're going to have a better, modern, kind of secure environment. And the users themselves do not know that their personal stuff is at such high risk, and they're asking questions going, wait a minute, if we're doing this at work, should we be also doing this at home? And you're like, wait a minute, oh my God, you're not doing this at home? Right? And I think it goes a long way to kind of enable people access to technology, but then create an environment where they can come and ask questions, and they can have those questions answered without, feeling like they're being talked down to. And that's another problem with our technical circles. Our subject matter experts are too much of a prima donna that, they don't want to talk to the end user.
Are you talking about me here?
No. Well, all of us.
No, and it's one of the things, right? Like when cars came out, right? Like cars are like automobiles, any auto technology is there to, of course, make our life better, make it easier for us to work further away, right? Because now we can live a little bit further away and still get to places, be closer, meet people. But there were regulations that had to be put in place, right? Like people just were not aware, like when cars first came out, like people were getting killed because they didn't know how to cross streets and all those things with these cars. Cars didn't, like the drivers didn't know how to actually navigate either. So all those regulations and controls had to be put in place. And I feel like, I don't mean to be a hard ass with my kids. It's of course they have access to the laptops and computers and phones at home and all those things. But it's how do I control it? So and have those conversations. Those are tough conversations. Like we just recently had to have it with our 7-year-old girl, right, about revenge porn, right, and what's happening out there, and because they're online sometimes. Right, because it's easier. Okay, you go deal with this, so I can go take this call, and you go watch this. But these things are in their faces. I don't even know how to deal with it because I didn't grow up with this. Now I'm in midst of this, and I think that's the big challenge is for organizations, right? Like, why do we care, right? Why do we care about personal security hygiene when we are going to be dealing with organizations mostly? Is that those personal security hygienes actually impact the organization security hygiene, right? Like, so if let's say, and again, these things aren't thought through, right? Sometimes it's like, if I am compromised personally, can they use that information? Right? Can they do something? Can they compromise my access within the organization? But we don't think about that, right? So from an organization, that's your worry. You care about, take care of what's happening with your bank account. That's not my problem. I'm not going to give you, as an organization, I'm not going to give you any education, any technologies to help you with that. I'm just going to do it for the 4 walls that I'm involved in. Except, that person opens a door and leaves the door open because of their own personal hygiene. I don't know if that's making sense, but
it's making a lot of sense. I'm smiling because, use case, just kind of analyzing an organization in the financial services industry, and I've a little bit of discovery, just scratching the surface. Users are actually the crowd in there is big on TikTok, right, and so the organization, as a measure to curb the use of TikTok, have banned it in their Wi-Fi kind of policies. They don't use TikTok at their desktops. They use it on their mobile devices. So they don't really give a crap if you turn it off in Wi-Fi. They're still using TikTok on their LTE, on the phones, right? But on those phones, as I looked at the phone of one of the employees that I was able to look at, there's no sandboxing. So there's no line, that is drawn in the sand between corporate apps and personal apps, right? And yes, as a corporate policy, TikTok is a no-no, and please, people, be careful with TikTok. The organization has no clue and no interest, basically, in sort of going, wait a minute, first of all, we're not solving the problem. We've turned it off in our Wi-Fi, but that was 1999 way of turning things down, because that's all that people did was on their keyboards, right? The other problem I discovered with the same user is, so the password strength for access to their, I want to say critical environment, right? I'm not going to expose too much of what environment it is. Let me count it in my head because I remember the password off the top of my head. 6 characters.
Right.
5 lowercase character, and the last character is a number. That's the password strength.
Yeah.
Right? So now when you think about this user that has, and no fault of the user here, maybe a little bit because they're not willing to sort of understand what the impact is that they're having on the organization, but no fault of the user nonetheless. The user is using technology as they know how to, right? They're on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and God knows what other websites. They have these free games they download all the time. The phone is full of games. There's like 4 pages of games in it, right? Now, all of these things are always looking for data. You don't even know the authors of some of these free games, where they've come from, who they are. Are they 16-year-olds just having fun, or are they sort of, like TikTok, the function of a nefarious government somewhere that's just trying to get into your pants, right? And then they're, just using that device casually with the only protection they have to an application on their phone, for which, by the way, they're using their, sign me in automatically, right?
Yeah.
Save my password and kind of get my face in so I don't have to sign in all that. Like 6 characters is too much to remember for me. You're gonna have to remember it. So it's on the device there somewhere, and it's only 6 characters, right? I mean,
and you don't know if some of these apps are actually secure to begin with.
Yeah.
They might be just storing these passwords in clear text. No idea. Like, we just have no idea.
And I'm going, why?
Yeah.
Why? Right?
Yeah.
I think 6 characters, I don't even have to do any work. I just kind of, my brute force thing will crack it in like 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? That's not security. So I think organizations have to kind of wake up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I know we've gone a little bit longer, but like for both of us, I think I can speak for you as well, that personal security, personal privacy,
Yes.
the conversations that need to be had is really important, because one, of course, we have kids and we have our family members that we care about, but also we just find, right, like, if we, like, these are holes that get created within organizations that we don't think about.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's important that as organizations, as consultants, that we keep on speaking to the users, not calling them dumb, not right, like, because it's not their fault. It's lack of education, and we make it like these technology companies are trying to make it as easy as possible to use their technology. They're not out there to educate you to say, you know what, you should turn these settings off. No, they want that information, so they don't tell you about it until...
Some of it is for legit purposes. If you call them for tech support, if they asked you 10 questions and you can't answer 8 of them, it doesn't help them.
Yeah.
So they need that information to be able to get you the support you need. Otherwise, you give them a 1-star rating and get them booted off the platform. So
Sure.
some of it is legit.
Sure,
right?
Some of it is, but again, a lot of it is used not for those support.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
They're not, like, I think Twitter had it recently where they had the phone numbers that were being used for multi-factor authentication, but they were using it to target advertising,
Correct.
right? So you're like, so again, yes, it's there to support you, but then you're using it for a purpose that you didn't tell us,
yes.
right? And so I think, again, for us, it's more and more, we want to provide this knowledge and have these conversations. And I think as organizations and as consultants, like I was saying before, we need to have these conversations with users. We can't just be, it's about me.
Yes.
It's about this little the 4 walls here.
Yes.
Those 4 walls are made up of cheese, right? Like,
Yes.
it can be knocked down.
Yes.
It can be knocked down because of the different issues, right?
Yes.
You bring in a virus from home, or you bring in malware from home.
I haven't
right?
even gotten into the IoT thing. Your cameras at home and
Right.
the Nest devices, and they're just,
All those things need to be looked at, right?
just a disaster waiting
Yeah,
to happen.
exactly.
So.
And so, again, we're not trying to scare people here, of course, but didn't mean to have a really long video on this, but I think it's for us, hopefully the passion is coming across, and we're passionate about making sure that at least you're knowledgeable about what
And
you
the
do.
reality is, in closing, and yeah, we've dragged this on for a little too long, but the reality is when things do go sideways, you're on your own. When
Right.
you get hacked, there's no blueprint. I was having this conversation with a friend, and I was like, okay, so tell me, what happens if suddenly you realize that, someone's siphoning money off of your bank account? do you know what's the first thing you need to do, and the second thing, and the third thing? Do you know what facilities are available to you? Do you know where to go, what to look for? You don't have a blueprint for any of that, and it's hit and miss. So why put yourself in that situation in the first place? That's where I'm coming from. Is we don't have the mechanisms necessarily in place. Not the providers, not the consumers, not even our governments. Like, they're not ready.
Right.
And so why put yourself in a situation where it's just a matter of educating yourself a little bit? Things are going to happen if they're going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
You can educate yourself. Things can still happen. Right.
Right.
It's not a guarantee that it won't happen.
Right. But at least, much like the example I started with, where, my phone provider was hacked 2 years ago. They just took 2 years to inform me now. Right.
They probably didn't even know until recently, possibly.
Maybe.
Possibly. I don't know what the
whatever. I'm not going to
is.
speculate.
Yeah.
But, I am going to be looking out for things. I'm going to be a little more aware than I was as far as that service is concerned. See what the touch points are, where else I could have been compromised. But the window of opportunity in my mind that the hacker had was very small.
Right.
And so it minimizes, from a probability perspective, that risk to me. And I can sleep at night. Because if it was the other way around, and if it got compromised, then I don't even know where to start to remediate it.
Right.
And a lot of people are stuck in this vortex of not knowing where their identities are stolen. They have issues with the government now. They have issues with their taxes. They have issues with all sorts of things. And they're getting poorer by the day because they're losing stuff.
Right.
Right.
I think that's a big thing is as individuals, we of course don't have the expertise that when an organization gets hacked, they have a team of people that they can bring on and whatnot.
Correct.
We can't, it is a hit and miss, right? Like even our governments, I think they're doing a good job. I mean, whether they're protecting the information or not, I'm not speaking on that. I guess that should just be more law enforcement, right? Like they're trying. I think law enforcement is trying to be on top of this and being able to provide the services that they can. Yes. But again, they're also playing catch up, right?
It's a case of blind leading the blind, and no offense to blind people. I mean, it's just unfortunate.
Yeah. So I think we'll leave it at that. But comment below, or at least connect and think about where your personal security is concerned. Right? Like, when was the last time you did a kind of a hygiene check? Just check on your settings and passwords and all those things. Let's start thinking about. Let's have those conversations. And we're hopefully all of us will be more secure together.
Yeah, sorry for the length of the video. It was my moment in the Santa chairs.
Yeah, he wanted to take full full advantage of it. But thank you. My name is Faizan Sabzali.
I'm Rahim Dawud.
Enclave Digital Ecosystems. Until next time, thank you.
Take care.